You ever walk into a pet store and get enticed by that cheap $15 yet beautiful betta fish stuck by its lonesome in that small cup? You might think to yourself, what's $15 gonna do? It's really cheap and it'll provide a lot of happiness for years to come. Do not let that little price tag fool you. In this video, I'm gonna reveal the true cost of owning a betta. This includes costs of setting up the tank, taking care of your betta fish regularly and properly, as well as some of the maintenance costs around it. Hopefully by the end of this video, you could come to the conclusion as to whether a betta fish is a worthy investment for you or your child. In this video, we will be doing a bit of math, but I will be working in ranges so that you could understand what is the cheapest, most economical route of owning a betta. And then on the other side, I'll show you a more expensive route you can take. Everything I'm going to be talking about today will be linked down in the description. If you want to support the channel, feel free to use them, but of course, no pressure at all. All the prices that I'll be using in my calculations are current prices at the time of filming this video. Prices fluctuate up and down on Amazon on a regular basis. Take the range with a grain of salt. Also, when it comes to my opinion on what is that bare minimum side of the price range, this may very well differ from your case or your opinion, and if that is the case, well, just cry about it. We're gonna keep a tracker on this corner and this corner. This corner is gonna include the cheaper options. This corner is gonna include the more expensive options. We're gonna go item by item. When it comes to a tank, my personal opinion on the lowest you can go is 5 gallons. Petco does a $1 per gallon sale that happens pretty frequently. During those cases, you can walk in, get a 5.5 gallon tank for $5.50. You can also go into the secondhand market to find cheaper tanks. For this exercise, we will use that 5.5 gallon. On the more expensive end, if you do want to be fancy with your tanks, you can always, of course, go the rimless route. Landon makes a great 7.1 gallon tank on Amazon. It's rimless and it looks amazing. I've honestly been eyeing it for a few months now. I just might pull the trigger. That tank retails just at about $100. Now onto the light. On the cheaper end, you could go with an Aquaneat 12-inch LED light. They go for around 13 bucks. I actually do own a few on my rack to my right, and they have lasted me well over a year thus far. On the more expensive side, if you want to get the Mercedes-Benz of aquarium lights, you can go for the Fluval LED light, specifically the 2-foot one. This light comes equipped with so many features. You don't even need a timer for it because it's built in. There are various programmable settings, so you got sunrise, midday, sunset, as well as night. The lights themselves emit the full spectrum. There is the ability to control the light via Bluetooth by connecting it to your phone, and ultimately it is just a very nice light. Last time I checked on Amazon, this light retails for around $160. Next up, we are going to talk about the filters. The most economical route is sponge filtration. Not only are the sponge filters themselves cheaper, but they also lighten the load on your electricity bill at the end of the month. Sponge filters do an amazing job with biological filtration. The one downside is that not only do you need to buy the actual filter itself, but you also do have to buy an air pump. With an air pump, you can use it for multiple sponge filters. This is an even better route if you do have multiple tanks. Aquaneat makes a sponge filter for $4, and with regard to the pump, if you are looking to only pump one specific tank, you could get a USB air pump and hang it on the side of your tank. The one I'll link down below is $10, coming at a grand total of $14 for full filtration. On the expensive end, I am going to be going the hang-on back filter route. Unlike sponge filters, hang-on back filters are great not only with biological filtration, but mechanical filtration as well. And chemical filtration, if that's something you care about, you always have the option to add that into the actual filter. There are definitely other types of filters out there that are a lot more expensive, like canister filters, but for the means of filtering a tank that's going to be housing a betta, I don't think that would be necessary, which is why I went with the hang-on back option. My favorite hang-on back filter is the Aqua Clear. I have a number of them running and they've never failed me. They're low profile, they're very quiet, they're very reliable, and they are super easy to clean. The specific Aqua Clear hang-on back filter I recommend is around $34. Now let's move on to the heaters, and if you don't already know, yes, betta fish do need their water to be heated. So on the cheaper side, there is this Tetra heater. I personally own a few of these as well. At the time of filming this video, they are at around $12. I haven't had any bad experiences with this heater. It's a reliable company overall. On the more expensive side of the spectrum, I'm gonna recommend the Freesea heaters. I think I own about 10 of their heaters and none of them have ever failed me to this day. When it comes to the Tetra heaters, the only downside is that it keeps the water at a consistent 78 degrees Fahrenheit. There is no option to adjust that temperature. When it comes to the free sea heaters, on the other hand, they do have an adjustable knob on top where you can adjust the temperature. Theoretically, in both types of heaters, your betta fish will be fine because 78 degrees still lies within the acceptable range for your betta fish. If you want to have that flexibility, I definitely would go with the free sea heater. Now let's move on to water conditioner. I don't think water conditioner should be something that you cheap out on. There are some water conditioners that do more than others. I only have one option for this category, and that is Seachem Prime. The specific bottle I looked at came in at about $16. The reason why I prefer Seachem Prime over other water conditioners is because not only does it account for chlorines, it accounts for chloramines, and it detoxifies ammonia, nitrites, and nitrates. Next up, we are going to move on to food. Similar to water conditioner, I do not think you should skimp out. The only difference I'll have between the cheaper option and the more expensive option is that in the cheaper option you get one choice, and in the more expensive option you have 3 choices. At a bare minimum, I highly recommend you get the Northfin Betta Bits. They come at around $7. Northfin Betta Bits are on the top of my list when it comes to dry foods for your betta fish. Feel free to watch this video on why that is the case. On the more expensive option, you are going to be actually buying 3 kinds of fish food. The first one will be, again, the Northfin Betta Bits that come at around $7. The next one will be the Fluval Bug Bites, which cost around $4.48. And then lastly, dried bloodworms, which come at around $10.70. So the rationale for having a mixture of food in the more expensive option is because while it is not required to feed your betta fish different types of foods, it definitely is a best practice, even on a regular basis. Now onto substrate. This is technically not a non-negotiable. You can have a tank without substrate for your betta fish, and that betta fish can theoretically live happily ever after. There definitely are a few minor benefits and use cases for substrate, such as using it as a medium to put your plants in, having that extra bit of surface area for your beneficial bacteria, and lastly, just making your tank not look ugly. Even though on the cheaper side, we can theoretically go with $0 and not use any substrate, I will still be going with substrate in this cheaper scenario. You have a number of affordable options when it comes to substrate. Petco sells bags for around $5. You could even get Black Diamond Blasting Sand if you have many tanks for only $10. Feel free to watch this video I have on that substrate. You could even go to the gardening section of Home Depot or Lowe's, look at the pool filter sand or some of the pebbles they have out there. But of course, since we are assuming we're building one tank for one betta fish, we'll go with the cheaper $5 option sold at Petco, even though you get less for the money. On the more expensive side, I am going to recommend Seachem's Fluorite Black Sand. It is a great option if you're looking for a substrate for a planted tank specifically. This sand costs around $32. Next up, let's move on to the lid. When it comes to betta fish, a lid is definitely recommended because they are jumpers. The only special case in which you don't need a lid is if you keep the water level a few inches below the top of the tank. And even in that case, you still do run a bit of risk. You could use poster board, corrugated plastic sheets. You could even go to the dollar store, find those $1 frames and take the glass panels out and use those. All these things range between $1 to $5. For the means of this exercise, on the cheaper end, we're gonna cost it out at $5. On the more expensive side, you can get a pre-made glass lid depending on the size of your tank. I actually have a few on my 20-gallon longs. Generally, there are 2 companies that I've seen that make this hinge lid pre-made. One company is Aquion, which makes the Versa lid top, and the other one is H2 Pro, which I've seen on Amazon. I highly recommend H2 Pro over the Aquion, and the only reason for this is because when it comes to the Aquion lid, the material they use when it comes to these hinges consists of solid black plastic. Effectively, you have a strip that is blocking a portion of the light reaching the tank. On the H2 Pro, on the other hand, they solve this by making sure that that plastic hinge is translucent. The H2 Pro lid came in at about $25.75. specifically for the 16-inch variation. Now on to the aquascape, or what essentially you use to decorate your betta fish's tank. On the cheaper side, we are going to go fully cheap and synthetic. When it comes to fake plants, even though they are not preferred over real plants, this may be the only option for some cases. Maybe you don't want to put in the care or effort around maintaining real plants. Nonetheless, if you do go the fake plant route, I highly recommend you make sure that those plants are made out of silk instead of those hard plastics that you usually see in those retail pet stores. I'll link one down below that I recommend, and it cost around $8 last time I checked. When it comes to the hardscape, I recommend you go with a floating betta log. If you want to see why a floating betta log may be beneficial for your fish, feel free to check out this video. The floating beta log is pretty affordable at $5. Now let's dive into the expensive side. On the expensive side, I recommend you get an easy plant such as Anubias. They actually do sell plants on Amazon. The one I'll link down below was $16. And then of course the tried and tested Dragon Rock, which I'll also recommend. They generally do have a smoother surface compared to other hardscape. The one I'll link down below is at around $37.75. When it comes to driftwood, ZooMed actually makes a great 2-pack of Mopani wood. They look amazing, and I do think it is a great deal of getting a pack of 2 for $16.20. Much cheaper than if you were to go into a brick and mortar pet store, that's for sure. Now let's dive into some of the tools you may need for regular maintenance. At the bare minimum, I do recommend you get some sort of siphon or vacuum to clean out your substrate as well as do water changes. The one I'll link down below is around $7. In addition to that, of course, you do need a bucket, which averages at around $5 whenever you go to your local Lowe's or Home Depot. On the more expensive end, you'll see that you really are just paying for convenience, which I honestly think is priceless when it comes to longevity in this hobby. I highly recommend you look into the one made by Higer. It costs around $25 for the kit. Another product that is used with a lot of seasoned fish keepers is the Python water changing kit. This does come at a hefty price of $86. The main benefit that comes with this kit is that you no longer have to lug buckets back and forth to and from your sink or your bathroom. The water you're siphoning out can go straight down the drain, and the water that you're adding back in can come straight from the faucet. Lastly, we have a fishnet. A fishnet is a fishnet is a fishnet, which is a fishnet. On the cheaper side, $3.95. On the more expensive side, $3.95. By the way, I also did another scenario where you take the cheaper case, replace some of the items with what's included in the Marineland 5-gallon portrait tank, and the grand total for that actually came out to be the Marineland 5-gallon portrait tank, for what you get, having everything work seamlessly together, isn't that bad of a deal. It actually does have a good business case around it when it comes to cost. So here we got the cheaper scenario, here we got the expensive scenario, and here we have options of the cheaper scenario mixed in with a Marineland 5-gallon portrait tank. These are ranges, so take that with a grain of salt, plus or minus maybe $10 on each side of the range, and that should give you a good idea of how much it truly costs to own a betta fish. There are some honorable mentions that I did not take into consideration in these case scenarios that you should still keep in mind nonetheless. You got your water bill, electricity bill, your gas bill if you're depending on that to heat up your tanks. Don't even get me started about medications, because that can be a very expensive rabbit hole. And lastly, the fact that there are recurring costs for some of these items, such as the foods and the water conditioners. Goal of this video wasn't to scare you out of buying a betta fish. Next time you walk into that Petco or PetSmart, make sure you think twice before you pick up that $15 betta sitting there. After this video, you are now able to level set your own expectations if you are a first-time fish keeper, or you can level set your child's expectations before you buy this fish for him or her. I do think the experience of keeping a betta fish is priceless, but always keep these ranges in mind. Hopefully you were able to get some value out of this video. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Comment down below if you want me to actually build one of these setups. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, check out Pharmaquatics.com, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.